Hello, welcome to Book Party on our Scholastic Instagram. I'm going to do a little dance while I wait for people to come in. I'm Connie. I'm a social media manager at Scholastic, and we started this series last month because we wanted to interview some cool authors and celebrate their new books coming out. So we have some. We're very excited to talk to our authors, and yeah, we are going to get to talk to three awesome authors today. Hi.
Hello.
How's it going, Pearl?
Good. Oh my gosh, space shirt. I'm into it.
It's part of my brand. I had to.
Very
I
good.
thought I saw Debbie in the chat. I'll give her a few minutes to try to make it in here. And yeah, we're excited to talk about some new books that came out this week. Your book came out yesterday. How excited are you?
Yes. I am so excited and like super touched about everybody picking it up and taking photos with it and telling me that they can't wait to have it in their classroom. It's so nice.
That's awesome. Just trying to figure out why I can't get Debbie in. Where are you, Pearl? Where are you talking to us from?
I am tuning in from Vancouver, BC, West Coast
There
in
we go.
There we
Canadaland.
go.
Oh my goodness, technology.
Did it.
We got it eventually. Instagram kind of helped me out here. I was like, there's a little flashing button at the bottom. Maybe I should press it. So I'm going to keep an eye out for Ralph, who is also set to join us. But here we have Pearl Lowe and Debbie
Pearl.
Michiko Florence.
Hi, Debbie.
Very excited to have both of you here. We want to talk about your new books that came out yesterday. Isn't that so exciting for you guys?
Yes.
How happy are you?
Super.
I have them right here. So Pearl, you want to tell us about Bailey School Kids?
Yes, so the Baby School Kids, very, very iconic series. We're turning them into graphic novels. Super excited about that. This is the first volume, Vampires Don't Wear Polka Dots, and it's basically about the kids at Bailey School Elementary, and they're getting a new teacher, and her name is Mrs. Jeepers, and she may or may not be a vampire. We're going to have to read to find out and see what happens.
Creepers. I actually wish I had worn a polka dot shirt today so that I could signify that I'm not a vampire, but I didn't find one. It's maybe in the laundry, so I got my space shirt on today.
Uh-oh.
That's just as good.
I know, right? I just want people to know that I'm not a vampire, but I may be in space, so I don't know. And Debbie, we have Just Be Cool, Jenna Sakai. Tell us about your YA novel.
Oh, okay. Well, this is a companion novel. It is middle grade. It's a companion novel to
Middle grade.
Keep It Together, Keiko Carter. And this one follows Jenna Sakai. Her motto is "Heartbreak is for suckers." And she is doing everything she can, trying not to deal with a recent breakup, her parents' divorce, and she's just immersing herself in just her newspaper club and trying to hide at this really cool Broadway diner called Lee's Stage Diner, where there's a cute but annoying boy there.
Things that they got on the cover that give diner, yeah. Yeah, we have some cool things on the front that signify that it's a diner. I love diners, and so very excited to be in this diner, this Broadway-themed diner with Jenna.
It is. I'm wearing my Hamilton shirt.
Nice.
So what inspired these stories? I know, Pearl, that you are adapting a book. So tell us a little bit about how that process went for you to get this project, and then what kinds of, I guess, changes or, tweaks that you were able to make to the story to like make it fresh and new for this year.
Yeah, well, one of the things that was so attractive to me when being presented with this opportunity was just the fact that so many people have, read these books throughout their childhood, and it was just something that resonates with a lot of people. I really love the lightly spooky element of these stories, and it was a really great book for myself personally as a scaredy cat. I feel like it was a good level of spookiness. Really enjoyed it, but I was also really excited because, we're trying to bring it to the new generations, and I feel like I personally, for me, in my artwork, I really like to try to reflect the real world in my artwork. And so adapting and being able to do some character designs and kind of designing kids who look like the kids I grew up with was really exciting.
Yeah.
And I think that one of my friends showed the book to their daughter, and their daughter was like, oh my gosh, that person looks like me, and they're a little black girl. And I just thought that, oh man, like that's just like what I do it for, you know, like it just made me so excited.
Yeah.
So there are certain things that, you know, obviously the story is very much the same, but there are certain things that I put myself into. You know, there is a situation with, like, you know, a little black girl perhaps getting her hair touched without permission. Like, I'm putting those kinds of stories and perspectives into the story to make it, you know, something like relatable for today.
Yeah. How are you able to like slip that in there? Is it all just in the art, or because I assume all of the words are the same, right? Did you also adapt the words, or did you just do the art?
Yeah, I did some adaptation for the script as well. So the writing is a little bit different. You also have to condense it a bit just because the novels were thicker and
switching.
Yes, exactly.
And like the dialogue,
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of like we wanted to choose, you know, kind of like the core story beats that were really relevant to the story and include those, but also, you know, make room for certain things that I wanted to bring to the story, you know, my own personality. So we were kind of doing, my editor and myself, Jonah and myself, are kind of like doing this balancing act of including, you know, things that have already been written, but also, again, like adapting it in a way that can bring a fresh perspective to the story.
Awesome. Debbie, what inspired Jenna Sakai's story? It is a companion novel. You have these two great girls. What inspired this second story in this like series?
I'm going to blame my editor, Jenny, because she asked me if I was interested in writing a sequel to Keiko Carter. And I kind of thought to myself, during the writing of Keiko's story, Jenna really intrigued me because Keiko's like this people pleaser, wears her heart on her sleeve, while Jenna, her best friend, is kind of blunt and doesn't like to show her feelings. So I was really intrigued by her. So I asked if I could write a companion novel that wasn't at the same period, that followed like the next semester. And my editor was like, yes. So yeah, I got to explore a character who was very different from Keiko, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Are there some elements from your own childhood that you included in this story?
Oh my God. Well, number one, the Japanese curry Japanese curry is my favorite comfort food. And I gave that to Jenna it's her favorite food, and she has a special connection with her dad. So her parents are just recently divorced and fighting a lot, and her dad moves out of state. So she's dealing with a lot of anger and hurt, but not really dealing with it because she like tamps it down. But the Japanese curry is a big connection for her. So that's definitely part from me. And my editor pointed out she was interested in seeing how I would write Jenna's story because I'm like Keiko. I'm like a people pleaser. I want everyone to be happy. And so that Jenna would be a challenge. And she was, in a way, not real. I don't know about that. I'm not real good about sharing my feelings, deep, dark, sad feelings. So I think that in that way I was able to channel myself into Jenna a little bit. And you know, she is Japanese American, and I am too. So I grew up in Los Angeles at a time there was a very large Asian American community. So I didn't really think about being Japanese American until much later when I grew up as an adult and moved out of the state. So it brings me great pleasure to write this story about Japanese American characters where, you know, race is a part of it because you can never take that away. It's very much a part of who you are, but also that's not the central theme of the story.
Yeah, how important is that for both of you that you're able to have these like diverse characters, but it's not like the main, like that's not the trauma and that's not the main conflict of the story. Like if
it's
both of
joy
you have a answer for that, Yeah, what about you, Pearl? Was that something that was really important to you for being able to make this adaptation?
Yeah, I feel like, you know, going through the Bailey School Kids as a series, I was really trying to see how much I could do with I guess within the realm of the story, because I really do personally like talking about culture and race and all that type of things. But with the Bailey School kids, it was like they just like I wanted to write them in a way where they just happen to be, you know, some kind of like ethnicity or whatever, just because it's really about like kids going on adventures and like finding out spooky stuff and like just being friends, you know, being kids. And I think as kids anyway, like you don't really think about that kind of stuff, but visual cues are really important. And so like I really wanted to make sure that like I had characters that were Black, that were white, that were Asian, that were indigenous. Like I really, because I mean those were kids that I grew up around too, so I was like, I mean this is not a lie, like I grew up with them, so I really wanted to put them in that kind of, you know, context of like, hey, like all these different types of kids can be, you know, doing spooky adventures and like trying to solve mysteries and not have it central like to their like character where it's like, oh, it's traumatic, like, oh no, like this is like some kind of like thing that brings them down. It's like, no, this is just like they're being kids and they're also from different backgrounds. And yeah, that was kind of my thought process.
Do either of you did either of you have a monster teacher or a teacher that you thought was like a secret vampire, like something was going on at home?
You know, sometimes I remember, so there's this teacher I had in 3rd grade. Her name was Mrs. Scott. And I feel like she was one of those she was like an older teacher. She was like, I feel like maybe she always looked like she had secrets to keep. And she also looked like she sometimes did not get sleep. So I was like, are you like a vampire? Like, are you, is there something going on? I mean, especially as a 3rd grader, I'm like, what's going on? Like, teachers are so mysterious at that age. So I feel like that was kind of my thing.
Debbie, do you have a story?
You know, I had teachers that were scary, but more like they scared me because they were, I don't want to say mean, but like they would, you know, call you out or
intimidating,
yell at you for your homework or not writing your name the right way. But I guess that was more like middle school, and I was just, I mean, this is why I write the books that I do. I was so focused on friendships and crushes that I think the whole teacher thing was just like, well, yeah, they're a part of this school thing, but not a big part of the school thing. I do have a question for Pearl. You said that you were kind of a scaredy cat, but you write these stories, because I'm a huge scaredy cat. So I'm wondering how that plays into, I mean, it must be different because you're controlling the story. You don't have to be scared about what might happen. Does that help?
Yeah, exactly. That totally helps. Like knowing the outcome definitely helps, because then I'm not spooked, you know, not surprised or anything. I feel like also one thing that I guess really scares me is like visuals. Sometimes visuals can get really creepy, and I feel like approaching this story, I can kind of design things in a way where I'm like, okay, like this isn't too scary. I think that if I were, you know, at this age, this reader's age, that I would be okay. So I kind of like that. I get to be the person who introduces kids to lightly spooky things, from a person who also can only pretty much take lightly spooky things still to this day.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, a lot of kids are being introduced to like what they can take in terms of scary, and that's really funny. Like, especially on the like in 2D, it's like it's more like suspense and tension instead of like you making like jump scares.
Yeah,
so I imagine it's like a good introduction for kids who are gonna find out like they're the ones who love spooky stuff.
And I'm thinking with the graphic novel aspect would probably make it a little easier, because for me, because I'm like, I would do that. I would read a graphic novel for kids that was kind of scary before I read like a middle grade novel that was scary, because my imagination will run with me. Whereas with the graphic novels, it's like you have the pictures in front of you, maybe.
True. I feel like it's more contained in that way. Yeah.
So neither of you like scary stories, because I was going to ask like if either of you had a favorite spooky story at all.
Well, it's like, you know, when I was little, we're speaking about like kids like spooky, and I think I was okay when I was in elementary school. I checked out this book. I can't remember the name of it. Oh, There's Something at the End of the Bed. And that was the name.
Ooh.
And it was a bunch of spooky short stories. I don't know if anybody here remembers it. I'm old. But I used to read that over and over again. And the one story about the thing at the end of the bed, and these eyes were staring at the person in the bed, and they were so scared because these eyes were staring at them, and it turned out to be their toenails.
Terrifying. Yikes. Wow. I had a book when I was younger that was my like spooky story introduction. I think it was, I also can't remember, it was like a series of short stories, and they were all like campfire, like in the woods, like camping, and I've never done that. I'm total city girl, and I was just like, this is not for me. Hi Ralph, you made it.
Hey Ralph.
Hey Ralph.
Yes, hi, sorry, I was having some technical problems.
No problem. We
everybody.
understand. It happens. Welcome. Not to throw you in to the chat here, but we'd like to introduce your book. I have it right here. Total Mayhem, Monday in the Cave of Thieves. Tell us a bit about your book. Loading.
Okay.
Oops. 1 second. Let's see. There we are. Hi. Were you able to hear the question?
Hi. I was not. I'm
okay. So if you're able to hear, we're loading.
Technology.
You know, the rainbow wheel of death, as we well know it. While Ralph tries to get in here, in the chat, Bridget asks, what were some like books in your childhood that inspired you to make like writing and creating stories your career?
Go for it, Pearl.
I feel like I feel like it's hard to pinpoint like a bunch, because I feel like I just kind of like inhaled them and like absorbed them at like random times, because I primarily work in animation actually, so I watched a lot of things and I didn't really get into reading until I was a little bit older. I think I was into reading, but I was into reading graphic novels and like manga, and like people were like, oh, those weren't books, so I wasn't into reading until later, you know. But I really, I mean, I really liked anything that was magical girl themed, like anything from like Clamp. Shonen Jump was also really cool. I just feel like, you know, just like anything that was really accessible to me, which ended up being things from Japan, like comics from Japan.
Were you a
like,
Sailor Moon fan?
I mean, I was more of a Cardcaptor Sakura fan, because again, I was a scaredy cat, and I feel like I was scared of the villains, but I really like magical girl stuff. And I feel like anything in that realm. Yeah, it was scary, right? I think in animation, because things are moving, it's scary.
Yeah.
But I think when things are drawn, like Debbie was saying, like I think you take it in at a different pace, so it's a little bit better. But those kinds of books really like stuck with me, and kind of have led me to think about like, oh, I like creating these types of stories and making sure kids kind of feel the same joy that I felt while reading those kinds of stories. So.
Oh, that's very cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I gravitated toward all the Judy Blume books, and I love them because they were about friendship.
That makes a lot of sense with your novels.
And kind of first crushes, right? So those are the books I'd love to read over and over.
See the inspiration is directly there. Yep.
But I do have to jump in and say the whole manga thing too. In my book, Jenna Sakai really loves Inuyasha. Which is manga that I totally love. I'm obsessed.
Love
so, like,
yes.
Get that in there.
You had to get that in there. You had to get that in there.
Yep.
Someone in the chat asks. Rain asks in the chat if either of you were watching the Tokyo Olympics and like the opening ceremony and like caught some of the manga references that were in there. If either of you watched the Olympics, I don't know.
I feel really bad. I'm on multiple deadlines right now.
That
I'm
makes
working
sense.
on like
it's
lots
fine.
of books.
No worries.
I have
no problem.
I have not caught it, except recently I was at the vet and they had the Olympics playing, and it was just really wonderful to be able to see some of it.
Yeah.
But no, darn, there was Manga References. I missed it.
Yeah, yeah. I forget what the first one was, but in terms of animated references, one of the wind. I forget what the sport was, but something with like wind and maybe someone in the chat remembers. But he had the Avatar arrow.
Oh, cool.
Planted into his hair. It was very cool. So I love the way that people were able to like introduce like some pop culture in there.
Awesome.
That was really cool. So sadly, Ralph has not made it back. Oh wait. No.
Is he back?
Nope, someone else is trying to request in, and no. Millie in the chat asks Pearl. Millie in the chat asks Pearl, what was it like to work both in animation and in books? How is it similar and how is it different? I know, Pearl, you worked on Hair Love, which is so good. Definitely worth that. Worth all the acclaim that it got. So precious and sweet. So yeah, what is the sort of difference for you? And how do you like transition between the two?
Yeah, I feel like the two pipelines are very different, and I feel like speeds are different. Where in animation, I feel that a lot of productions are very deadline driven, and so things kind of go at a quicker pace. Not that, obviously we have deadlines in publishing, but in animation it's a little bit different. And I feel like for me, I do storyboards, and so comics and storyboarding are kind of similar in a way where, there are panels that you do and you do drawings within those panels. I think that sometimes the thinking is different for me, where when I do storyboards, I think of all these images put together, and when we flip through them, they create emotion and you get, a story point through the movement. But for publishing for comics, it's like illustrative. So it's like one panel has to like say a lot of things. So I think that was my kind of like learning curve of like, okay, like in storyboards, I try to keep it, like not too crowded and not too many details, but like in comics, it's like, oh no, you can do that. And you can add more information because the reader can take that time to scan and like look at different things. And so the two professions are just like, the delivery of information is different. So that's one thing. But I also feel like, there's still team collaboration, which is something that I really enjoy, in comics and in animation. And yeah, I feel like it wasn't that big of a move where I felt, probably because I came from storyboard, like that it felt like a whole, like 180, but it felt kind of like a pivot or like a sidestep, and there are definitely different elements, but the switch wasn't bad. I'm still learning about pipeline stuff. Sometimes in animation, things have to get approved before you can draw a certain thing. And then in comics, people are like, oh, you can color that whatever you want. You don't have to ask me. I'm like, I don't have to, wait, what do you mean? So there are certain things. So I can take a little bit more liberty with this, or I can design this character in a different way, because I don't have to worry about all these different, like sending stuff overseas, like for example, and they have to look at it and all that kind of stuff. So those are some of the differences. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, Ralph's back.
Ralph, hello.
You're back.
Sorry.
You fought the technology overlords and you made it back. Hopefully they will not attack again. I mean, this is actually a great, segue into Total Mayhem, because it is all about things going wrong in one day, right? Tell us a little bit about your book.
My book is about a little guy called Dash who goes to school, but before he does, everything starts going wrong at home and his breakfast gets completely interrupted by various mayhem type situations, which then continue throughout the day at school. And it's a lot of fun. It's a very fast-paced action mystery story. It's very, very silly. It draws pretty strongly on my childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. It's meant to be quite funny. Hopefully kids find it funny.
Yeah, it has all these great little Easter eggs in it. It calls the copyright page The Boring Stuff. And it has an almanac in the back with like descriptions of things in the story. Ralph was going to ask, what is your favorite like wacky word that you came up with for this story? There's all sorts of like crazy phrases and words. Dash is attacked by scallywags and a two-tailed devil cat. Like you come up with all sorts of really fun like compound words and phrases. Like what was that process like coming up with those?
Well, that was two questions.
Oh, is that me this time?
Can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
These stories were based, the books of which they are basically telling stories to my godson. Can you hear me?
It was breaking up a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think you're better now. Yeah.
Okay. They were based on telling real stories to my real life godson. So when I tell him stories, I just make up stuff. And that's how all the invented material came into the books.
That's amazing. So we were answering some questions in the chat. Jordana, hi Jordana, wants to know for all the authors, what surprised you all about becoming a children's book author? Was there anything that was surprising? Like, is this the path that you thought you would go in life? Let's start with Debbie.
You know, the biggest thing that surprised me, because when I first started out, it was like, I'm going to say like over maybe 20 years ago, I had this, I want to be a published author. I had this romanticized vision of authors just sitting in the attic room with a shawl around them and just making up stories. And then I come to learn that, no, you have to go out there in public and talk to people, and there's book reviews. And so that was surprising, but I have to say I love it all. The school visits, especially, I didn't know anything about that was something that you could do. And I am a former classroom teacher. So being able to go into schools and talk to kids, it has been an absolute surprise and a joy of being an author.
That's awesome. How about you, Ralph? Was being a children's book author like what you were intending to do? What has surprised you about it since you've become one?
I wasn't intending to. I've always loved being with kids and telling them stories and being a silly adult. I've never really become an adult. I've always been a kid. So if I go into a new social situation, I will always land up with the kids. It's much easier than the adults. But what with this, because the story came out of nowhere in the middle of COVID, and I've never really been able to write very well. What I did was I would tell the story to this little guy, and then I just decided to try and write it, which I couldn't do. So I recorded it into my phone. I just told the story and transcribed that, and bang, the story was there. So it's got a very, it's written as the same way I speak, which is a little bit messy, quite staccato. And I think that comes across with great energy. So that's what really surprised me. I thought
that's an amazing process.
Really have to sweat, but that's been a lot easier than I expected.
That's a really amazing process. I wish I could do that, but my brain moves so much faster than I can speak it out that it just gets all tongue-tied and tangled. So anytime I'm trying to like just verbally transcribe something, it doesn't sound the same.
Well,
so that's really
there
amazing
is a little
that.
trick. Is if you record yourself talking and then you really slow it down, it does actually make a lot of sense. If you slow it down, back.
Oh, I don't like the sound of my own voice. Was that a struggle for you? Was listening to the sound of your own voice as you were transcribing a struggle? It's a struggle for me.
It was absolutely horrific, but then
but you make it through and you got a book out of it.
Yeah.
Pearl, what about you? You started in animation, and so your stories are very like the things you've done have all been so animated, which tends to be for kids. Was that what you intended, or what?
Yeah, I feel like, this is like, I think I've been in publishing for like over a year, just a little bit, so I'm fairly new. And I feel like one of the things that I'm not used to is the attention on me as a creator, as an individual, because in animation, you're part of a collective. And I feel like episodes go out, you see the titles and the credits, but you don't necessarily see the people behind the production. And so when you create a book, it's kind of like, well, this is the illustrator, this is the person who's written the story as well. Like, we're putting you out there. We want to hear your perspective, your thoughts. It's very interesting to experience real time, and that's not something that I'm used to. And it's also very interesting to talk to kids, because I do make content for kids and animation, but I don't get to see the immediate feedback, because I'm like, all right, episode's airing, like, I don't know where these kids are, like, whatever, but like going to like classroom visits, for example, and like talking about like my book, or talking about like, hey kids, drawing for a living is a real thing, like talking about that and seeing their faces and like hearing the feedback, and like hearing some of them kind of being like validated and in the hobbies that they like to do. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm like impacting these kids like right now, like I'm seeing it right now, whereas in animation I don't necessarily see that.
Live and in person, yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, the ability, like, it is still like a slower process. Animation takes way longer for you to like interact with the kids who have come across your content. Books are a little bit faster, but still take a while. So maybe, you know, you'll end up like doing something live and the kids will be reacting right there.
Yeah.
Would you all be friends with the characters in your book? So Jordana asked, for Debbie specifically, would you be friends, more friends with Keiko or with Jenna?
Oh my gosh, Jordana. Oh God, that's really tough, because I don't know. I think having two people pleasers as friends would, yeah, you know, it would be hard if like I were hanging out with someone who was exactly like, no, you go first. No, we'll do what you want. I think that would be annoying and we'd never get anything done. So I would want to be friends with both of them for different reasons. I think Jenna's more like, you know, she'd tell you how it is. And sometimes you need a friend who's going to be honest with you and kind of tell you how it is. So that wasn't really an answer, but hopefully I can get away with that.
I'll let it pass. Pearl, there are several characters in your book. Is there one that you think you would be best friends with?
Oh man, I feel like I have the same answer as Debbie. I'm the type of person, and probably as a kid too, where I like to be friends with multiple types of people, but like for different reasons. And I feel like immediately I would probably gravitate to the black girls in the class. I'd feel like, please, let's be friends. But also one of the characters, Melody, which I probably would be like the closest to, she's also like kind of daring, and I'm kind of like I was kind of a conservative kid. Like if like kids would climb up a wall and like jump from the top to the bottom, I'd be the kid at the bottom being like, okay, have fun. Like I wouldn't climb to the top, that kind of thing. So I feel like she might push my comfort zone, but maybe I would also be like, oh my gosh, like I can't do this. It's too scary.
Yeah. Sometimes you need someone to drag you, and sometimes you need to be the person like, don't do that.
Yeah.
So it's about the balance, right? Ralph, I'll ask you the same question. Dash comes like directly out of your head. So is it like Dash is too close to being you to be friends with, or he's just different enough where you think you'd be good friends as kids?
We would be good friends, but it's a really easy question to answer because the protagonist is Dash, and he's my godson. So when I wrote the book, I just wrote about him. But his best friend is a guy called Rob Newman, who is my best friend in real life. So it's very easy.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Nice.
Fun.
oh, that's so cool.
Very awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So last question before we go. Your books have come out. They're into the world. It is a birthday party. So what do you wish upon your book now that it's out into the world? However you interpret that question. I'm going to start with Debbie.
Oh, man. What I wish for Jenna, I just hope that as she finds her way into readers' hands, especially the readers who loved Keiko, I hope they love Jenna just as much as they've loved Keiko. And for people who haven't discovered Keiko, I hope they fall in love with Jenna. I just want them to embrace her. I know she can be a rough person because she puts up walls, but she's just wants to be loved just like the rest of us.
Yeah, I think a lot of kids will appreciate that and resonate with it. It's really great. How about you, Pearl?
Yeah, I feel like I just want kids or whoever is reading, honestly, if you want to read these books, you don't have to be a kid, but I think that
whatever age,
whatever age, I just really want the reader to feel like they see themselves in the story and that they could potentially go on some kind of adventure like I am drawing in this story. I feel like, like as a kid, sometimes I was like, oh, like I love this story, oh, but no one looks like me in it. So I guess I won't be that type of magical girl. I can't possibly be this kind of person, but I hope that people who read it are like, oh yeah, that could be me.
Yeah. And how about you, Ralph?
I wrote these stories in a kid's voice, and I'm not a very technical drawer. So I've received great compliments about how I'm able to make it look like kids did the illustrations, and that must be really cool. But actually, it's because I'm not a very good drawer. So what I would recommend is if kids saw these books and thought, I can do the same, and they tried to write their own books. I would love it.
That's amazing.
Oh, that's
I love
great.
all
Yeah.
of your answers.
That's awesome.
Wow. I'll blow out the candle. We've made our wishes. Hopefully they come true in the world. Thank you, all three of you, for coming on Book Party.
Thank you.
Sorry, Ralph, about all the technical difficulties, but you made it in. We were able to do it, and this was great. We're gonna be back next month with a new book party. Watch our socials for who's next. And I appreciate all three of you. Happy book party!
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right.
Bye-bye.
I'm Scholastic Social Media Manager, and I'll see you next month. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.